I faked a trip to my cousin's place, but in reality, I stayed hidden at my neighbor's house watching my own home. What I discovered in the early hours of that Thursday made me realize that sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who betray us the deepest. My son and my daughter-in-law were hiding something so disturbing that when the truth finally came out, my life was never the same again. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the Elderly Stories channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Gwen. I am 62 years old and I live in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago. This house, where I have lived for 35 years, was built brick by brick with the sweat of my late husband, Anthony. Every room tells a story of ours. The porch where we drank coffee from Monday to Sunday. The backyard where my son Richard learned to walk. The kitchen where I prepared thousands of meals with love. When Anthony died 5 years ago, Richard insisted on coming to live with me, along with his wife, Patricia. I thought it was genuine concern, the love of a son who does not want to see his mother alone. How innocent I was. The first few months seemed normal. Patricia was kind. She helped with the housework. She baked those carrot cakes I liked so much. Richard fixed things that broke, took care of the garden, talked with me about football and politics. But about 3 months ago, something changed. It started with the whispers. I would walk into the living room and they would stop talking abruptly. Richard would hide his phone when I got close. Patricia would change the subject with that forced smile that fooled no one. I would ask what they were talking about and always received the same empty answer. Nothing important, work, stuff, nonsense. Then I noticed that the guest room, the one at the back of the house, started being locked all the time. Before the door was always open. I kept old bedding there, boxes with photos, things I no longer used. When I asked why they were locking the room, Patricia answered too quickly that there was dampness, that they were protecting my things. But I never authorized any of that. The nights became strange. I would hear noises coming from that room after midnight, footsteps, low voices, movement. One morning around 2 o'clock, I clearly heard the front door open. I got up, carefully peeked down the hallway and saw Patricia welcoming a young woman, maybe in her 20s. They spoke in low voices, and the girl handed her something that looked like money. Patricia counted it quickly, put it in her pants pocket, and took the young woman directly to the back room. The key turned in the lock. I went back to bed with my heart racing, trying to understand what was happening in my own house. At breakfast the next morning, I acted as if I had not seen anything. Patricia was too cheerful, Richard distracted on his phone as always. I asked them if they had slept well, and both answered yes, as if that late-night visit had never happened. My head was buzzing with thoughts. What were they doing? Why were they receiving people behind my back? Why were they locking that room? I tried to use my master key to open the back room door when they went out, but I discovered they had changed the lock. They changed the lock on a room in my house without telling me. I felt anger rising in my throat, but I controlled myself. Confronting them without proof would be useless. They would deny everything. They would invent excuses. Maybe they would even make me doubt what I myself had seen. I needed a plan. That was when I thought of faking a trip. I would say I was going to spend a week at my cousin Mary's house in Florida. I would leave the house empty and watch from afar what they did when they thought I was not around. But observe from where. That was when I thought of Mr. Wilson, my neighbor next door. He is 68 years old, a widower like me, and has always been a present friend. The next afternoon, I crossed the low fence that separates our properties and knocked on the back door of his house. Mr. Wilson was watering the plants when he saw me. I realized by his expression that something was wrong. "Gwen, I am glad you came. I need to tell you something." We sat in his kitchen, and what I heard left me frozen. Mr. Wilson said that for weeks he had noticed strange movement at my house. Different people entering and leaving, always at night, always with suitcases or backpacks. He thought they were friends of Richard or relatives of Patricia, but he began to suspect when he saw money being exchanged at the door. My stomach turned. I told him my suspicions, what I had seen, the whispers, the locked room. Mr. Wilson nodded with regret. "I think your son and daughter-in-law are using your house for some business, Gwen. I do not know exactly what, but it is nothing good." That was when I put together the full plan. I would fake the trip and stay in Mr. Wilson's guest room. From the upstairs window, he had a direct view of my house. We could watch everything without being seen. He agreed immediately, worried about me offering help like a true friend does. That same night during dinner, I dropped the news. I am going to travel tomorrow to Florida. Mary has been insisting for a long time, and I decided to spend a few days with her. The reaction was instant. Richard looked up from his plate with a strange shine in his eyes. Patricia smiled too much, way too enthusiastic. "That is wonderful, Gwen. It will do you good. We will take care of everything here." Richard agreed too quickly. "Yes, Mom." "Enjoy yourself, rest. Everything is under control here." That poorly disguised relief on their faces confirmed everything. They wanted me gone. They needed me out of the house. The next morning, I put on the whole show. I packed my old suitcase, put in clothes, toiletries, everything in plain sight of them. I called Mary loudly from the living room so they would hear. My cousin was in on the plan and agreed to play along. Richard insisted on taking me to the bus terminal. At the terminal, he hugged me and told me to call him when I arrived. I looked for guilt in his eyes, remorse, any sign that the boy I raised still existed in there. But I only saw haste. He wanted to see me leave soon. I entered the terminal as if I were going to take the bus, but I waited half an hour hidden and left through another door. I took a taxi and asked him to drop me off 2 blocks before my street. I walked to Mr. Wilson's house through the back entrance. He already had everything ready. The guest room with the view of my house, binoculars on the small table, a comfortable chair by the window. Now we just have to wait, Gwen. The first hours were deceptively calm. Patricia went to the market in the morning. Richard went to work as always. The house remained empty and silent. But when night came, everything changed. Around 7 in the evening, a car stopped in front of my house. 2 people got out, a young man and a girl, both in their mid-20s. They were carrying large backpacks. Patricia opened the door before they rang the bell, as if she was already expecting them. There was a quick conversation at the door. I saw the young man take money from his wallet and hand it to Patricia. She counted the bills with agility and invited them in. My heart raced. I had just watched my daughter-in-law receiving a payment from strangers and letting them into my house as if it were a hotel. Mr. Wilson was beside me, witnessing the same scene. "Are you seeing that, Gwen? It is exactly what I told you. They are renting out your house." The rage I felt was like a fire in my chest. Renting rooms in my house, in the house I built with my husband, without my knowledge, without my permission, transforming my home into a clandestine business. I wanted to cross the street at that moment and confront them in front of those strangers, but Mr. Wilson held me by the arm. "Calm down, Gwen. If you go now, you will only know this. But if we wait, we will discover everything. How long have they been doing this? How many people? How much money? Then you will be able to act with all the cards in your hand." He was right. I took a deep breath, trying to control the fury. I sat down again by the window with trembling hands in my lap. During the next hour, I saw lights turn on in several rooms of my house, the living room, the kitchen, and then that back room she kept locked. Now I understood why. There was no dampness. There were guests. Strangers sleeping in the same space where I kept my late husband's clothes for years. The photos of our life together, the memories of 35 years of marriage. Tears began to flow without me realizing it. They were not tears of sadness. They were of betrayal. How could my own son do this to me? How could he look me in the eye every day, knowing he was using me that way? Around 9 at night, Richard arrived from work. He entered the house normally, as if it were just another day. Half an hour later, another couple appeared. Even younger, they seemed to be traveling. Patricia repeated the ritual. Money in hand, professional smile, door opening. I counted mentally. 4 strange people inside my house. 4 strangers occupying my space using my water, my electricity, my gas. Mr. Wilson made a quick calculation. If each one pays about $50 a night, they are making $200 just today. In a month, that is $6,000. $6,000 a month earned illegally using your property, without paying me a cent, without even having the decency to ask me if they could do this. The night advanced, and the lights of my house went out one by one. The guests retired. Richard and Patricia also went to sleep. Everything returned to silence, as if nothing bad was happening. I stayed awake all night, unable to close my eyes, knowing there were strangers sleeping under my roof. At 6 in the morning, the front door opened. The first couple left with their backpacks. A car was waiting for them. They left quickly, discreetly, like ghosts disappearing with the daylight. Half an hour later, the second couple did the same. By 7:30, all the guests had already left. Patricia went out to the yard with a trash bag, threw it in the bin, and went back inside. Everything was clean, tidy, as if the night before had never existed. Richard left for work at 8, wearing a suit, carrying his briefcase, with that posture of a responsible man. But now I knew the truth. During the day, I watched Patricia cleaning the house. She changed sheets, tidied up the rooms, prepared everything for the next guests. She worked with efficiency, like someone who has an established routine. This was not new. It was a well-assembled system that had been working for a long time. When night fell, more guests arrived. This time, it was 3 people. Patricia received them with the same dynamic, payment smile door, and I kept watching from Mr. Wilson's window, mentally documenting every movement, every transaction, every betrayal. On the second day of observation, Mr. Wilson told me something that changed everything. It was late at night, almost midnight, when he turned to me with a serious expression. "Gwen, there is something else you need to know. 2 weeks ago, I saw Patricia talking to a man at the coffee shop on the corner. It was not Richard. It was an older guy, well-dressed with a leather briefcase. They talked for almost an hour. My heart sped up. What man? Mr. Wilson hesitated before continuing. I do not know who he was, but I heard a few words of the conversation. They were talking about documents about mental health evaluation, about nursing homes. The world came crashing down on me. Mental health, evaluation, nursing home. Those words resonated in my head like alarm bells. They were not just robbing me. They were planning something much worse. Mr. Wilson put his hand on my shoulder. "Stay alert on Thursday night, Gwen. Every Thursday, there is more movement. That is when you are going to discover everything." I spent the following days in a state of constant alert. I watched the guests arrive and leave. Patricia managed everything with precision. Richard helped less visibly, but he was a total accomplice. He bought extra supplies, kept the garden nice, did maintenance on the house. And every night I saw them counting money together at the dining table. That table where we ate together for years as a family. Thursday arrived. From early on, I noticed that the atmosphere was different. Patricia cleaned the entire house with extra care. She bought fresh flowers and put them in vases around the living room. She changed towels. She checked every detail. It was as if she was preparing something special. Richard arrived from work earlier than usual. By 6 in the afternoon, he was already home helping with the final preparations. And then the movement began. It was not just 1 or 2 guests like the other days. They were whole groups. The first group had 5 people. Then 3 more arrived. Then a couple. Then 2 young men alone. I counted mentally while my stomach shrank. There were 11 people inside my house, 11 strangers occupying every available space. The living room became a common area. The kitchen was full, the rooms all occupied. My house had transformed into a complete hostel. Mr. Wilson watched beside me in disbelief. I never saw so much movement like this. It is as if Thursday was the special day for them. I did the math quickly. If each person paid $50, they would make more than $550 just that night. The hours passed slowly. The guests had dinner talked. Some went out for a walk and came back. At 10 at night, the lights began to go out. The guests retired. Patricia and Richard cleaned everything and also went to sleep. The house fell silent. But Mr. Wilson had told me to wait, that in the early hours of Friday, I would discover everything. So I waited with every muscle in my body tense. The clock on the wall of Mr. Wilson's house marked the passing of time with a tick-tock that seemed louder and louder in the silence of the night. 11:30, 11:40, 11:50. My heart beat so hard I could feel the pulse vibrating in my neck. When the clock struck midnight, I held my breath. The side door of my house, the one that faces the backyard, opened slowly. A silhouette stepped out. It was Patricia. But she was not alone. Behind her came a man I had never seen before. Tall, about 50 years old, dressed in dark clothes. He was carrying a leather briefcase in his hand. The same briefcase Mr. Wilson had described. My heart raced. What was happening? Why was Patricia meeting with that man in the middle of the night? Why were they leaving through the back door like criminals? They walked toward the back of the yard where the old shed stands that my husband used as a workshop. Patricia took out a key, opened the rusty padlock, and they both entered. A dim light turned on inside there. Through the dirty small window of the shed, I could only see shadows moving. They were talking, gesturing. Patricia took something out of her bag. Papers. They seemed to be documents. The man examined them with a small flashlight. Then he took other papers out of his briefcase. A thick file full of pages. Patricia took the documents and began to read page by page. She nodded several times. It seemed they were closing some kind of deal. The meeting lasted almost half an hour. Finally, the man put everything back in the briefcase. Patricia turned off the shed light. They came out, but instead of going back to the house, they walked to the back gate. There is a small gate there that opens to the alley. Patricia opened it. The man left through there and disappeared into the darkness. Patricia closed the gate, put the padlock on, and returned to the house through the side door. Everything happened in less than 40 minutes. Silent secret, invisible to anyone who was not watching closely. I woke up Mr. Wilson, who had nodded off on the sofa. I saw everything. Patricia met with a man in the shed. They reviewed papers, documents. They are plotting something, Mr. Wilson rubbed his eyes and looked at the clock. 12:30. That man operates in the shadows, Gwen. This is not just about renting rooms. Something bigger is happening. I could not sleep the rest of the night. I stayed sitting by the window watching my house as if it were enemy territory. At dawn on Friday, the guests began to leave. Some left early. Others stayed to enjoy the weekend. Patricia made coffee for those who stayed. She acted like the perfect hostess. Coffee, bread, fruit, everything served with smiles. No one would imagine that hours before she had been in a clandestine meeting with a stranger. Richard left for work as usual. Patricia stayed alone with the remaining guests. This was my chance. I needed to get into that shed. I needed to see if they had left something, some clue about what they were planning. I told Mr. Wilson the plan. He tried to convince me not to go. Gwen, it is too risky. What if Patricia sees you? But I was determined. I have the key to this back gate. I can enter through the alley without being seen. Patricia is busy with the guests in the front part of the house. She won't see me. Mr. Wilson finally gave in, but insisted on coming with me to the alley to keep watch. We left through the back door of his house. We walked down the silent alley. It was Saturday morning and the neighborhood was quiet. Most people were still sleeping or drinking coffee inside their homes. We arrived at the back gate of my property. I took out the key with trembling hands. The padlock opened with a soft click. I entered my own yard like an intruder, with my heart beating out of control. The shed was about 50 feet from the gate. I walked crouched down, hiding behind the bushes I myself had planted years ago. Every step seemed too noisy, every breath too loud. Finally, I reached the shed. The door had a simple padlock, the same one my husband used decades ago. I searched for the right key on the ring. My fingers shook so much I tried 3 different keys before finding the right one. The padlock opened. I entered the shed and closed the door behind me. The sunlight entered through the dusty window, creating golden beams in the air. The place smelled of old wood and damp earth. Rusty tools hung on the walls, boxes piled in the corners. Everything seemed intact, normal. But then I saw something different on my husband's old workbench. A metal box. It was not ours. I had never seen it before. It was gray modern with a simple latch. I approached slowly. The box was closed but not locked. Just a latch that opened by pressing 2 side buttons. I tried it. Click. The box opened. What I saw inside knocked the air out of my lungs. There were stacks of money, bills of $20 and $50. I counted quickly. There must have been at least $15,000 there, all the money they had earned with the illegal business for months. But it was not just that. Under the money, there were documents. I took them carefully and began to read. The first was a lodging contract, a contract where my house appeared registered as a property available for temporary rental. The owner's name was Richard Miller, my son. But this was impossible. I was the legal owner. My name was on the deed. How could he sign a contract pretending to be the owner I kept reading? There was a footnote in small letters. Property transfer in progress. Documentation pending judicial process. I felt the ground crumbling beneath my feet. Transfer. Judicial process. They were not just using my house illegally, they were trying to steal it from me legally. The next document confirmed my worst fears. It was a psychological evaluation form, an official paper with the letterhead of a private clinic, and there in the patient field was my full name, Gilda Gwen Miller. The date of the evaluation was set for 10 days from now. The reason for the consultation. Evaluation of mental capacity and autonomy for decisions due to family concern with progressive cognitive deterioration. Progressive cognitive deterioration. They were painting me as a senile old woman, as someone who could no longer take care of herself, as someone who needed to be protected from her own decisions. And it was all a lie. I was perfectly fine. My mind was clear. My health was good for my 62 years. But they were going to invent a different story. With that doctor, with that fake evaluation, with that process they were already preparing. There were more papers. One of them was a quote from a nursing home, Life Full Residence, specialized care for the elderly. The price was $6,000 a month. It had yellow highlights on the part that said private rooms with continuous monitoring special program for patients with dementia. They were looking for a prison for me. An expensive and legal place where they would lock me up while they enjoyed my house and my money. The last document was the most terrifying. It was a broad and unrestricted power of attorney, a legal document that would give Richard total control over all my assets, bank accounts, and medical decisions. The document was ready printed, waiting only for my signature, and next to it was a handwritten note by Patricia. Dr. Marcus confirmed he can apply a mild sedative during the consultation. The signature will be obtained in a state of induced confusion. Witnesses already coordinated. Additional cost $5,000. My hands shook so much I almost dropped the papers. They were going to drug me, take me to a corrupt doctor, give me some medication that would leave me confused, make me sign that power of attorney without me understanding what was happening, with paid witnesses who would say I was conscious, all legal on paper, all fake in reality. I heard voices outside. I froze. It was Patricia talking to someone, probably a guest. They were close. Too close. I quickly took out my phone and took photos of all the documents, every page, every note, every detail. My hands were trembling, but I managed to capture the evidence. I put everything back in the box exactly as I found it. I closed the box. I locked the shed. I ran crouching back to the rear gate. Mr. Wilson was waiting for me in the alley with a look of distress. I thought they had caught you. You stayed there almost half an hour. I couldn't speak. I just showed him the phone with the photos. Mr. Wilson looked at the phone screen. He went from image to image, and his face got paler and paler. My God, Gwen, this is a complete criminal plan. Not only are they stealing from you, they are destroying you completely. I nodded my head, while the tears I could no longer hold back ran down my face. I need to call someone. I need to do something now. I cannot wait anymore. We went back to Mr. Wilson's house. With hands still shaking, I called Beatrice, my lawyer friend. We met 20 years ago in an embroidery group. She was always smart, studious. She went to law school at 40 and specialized in family law and estates. If anyone could help me understand the legal implications of what was happening, it was her. Gwen, what you are telling me is extremely serious, said Beatrice over the phone, with a voice loaded with concern. If they are operating a lodging without a license, without paying taxes, and without your consent as the owner, they are committing several crimes. Fraud, misuse of property, tax evasion. But what worries me most are those documents about mental capacity and the nursing home. Gwen, does your son have any power of attorney of yours? Any signed paper that gives him power to decide for you? I thought hard. No, I never signed anything like that. All my documents are in the bank safe. Beatrice sighed with relief. Good. Very good. But listen carefully. If they are consulting someone about declaring you mentally incompetent, it means they are looking for a legal way to take control of your assets. The process is complex. It needs real medical evaluations, psychological exams, a hearing with a judge. They cannot simply declare you incompetent just like that. But if they get a corrupt person willing to falsify reports, if they have an unscrupulous lawyer who knows the loopholes of the system, they can try. And if they succeed, Gwen, they can commit you to a nursing home against your will and keep your house legally. Terror took over me. What do I do? Beatrice. She thought for a moment. First, you need concrete proof of everything they are doing. Photos, videos, testimonies. You already have the photos of the documents. That is excellent. Second, you need to protect your legal papers. Make sure they do not have access to anything. Third, as soon as we have enough evidence, we are going to file a legal action. I will take care of the entire legal process, but Gwen, you have to be very careful. If they suspect you know something, they can accelerate the plans. They can try something drastic. Her words froze my blood. Something like what Beatrice hesitated before answering. Like putting medication in your food so you appear confused in front of a doctor. Like creating situations where you seem unstable. Like inventing proof that you cannot take care of yourself. I have already seen cases like this, Gwen. They are more common than people imagine. I hung up the phone with cold hands. Now I understood the dimension of the danger. They were not just robbing me. They were preparing me for a worse fate. Losing my autonomy, my house, my identity. Being declared incompetent. Being locked in an asylum while my son and daughter-in-law kept everything I built. And all under the pretext of legality, with papers signed by doctors and lawyers. With a judge who would never know the truth. On Sunday, Beatrice came to Mr. Wilson's house. She brought a trusted notary, a man named Attorney Arnold, about 60 years old with a serious but gentle countenance. Ms. Gwen, I am very sorry for what is happening, he said, shaking my hand. But I want you to know that we are going to protect your assets completely. When we finish today, your son will not be able to touch a hair of your property without facing a criminal process. During the next 4 hours, I signed several documents. Beatrice explained each one with patience. This is a revocation of power of attorney. It cancels any power that may exist in Richard's name, current or future. This one here is a declaration of full mental capacity that will be certified by a forensic psychologist who will evaluate you tomorrow. This is a new will that replaces any previous version. And it specifies that Richard is excluded as an heir due to fraudulent acts. And this last one is a request for a protective measure that we will present to the judge on Monday. Every signature made me feel stronger, more in control. I was no longer the scared victim spying from the window. Now I was a woman taking legal action against those who tried to destroy me. And the trap I asked when we finished. Beatrice smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone preparing checkmate. The trap implies that you go back home, Gwen. My heart skipped a beat. Go back home. Now Beatrice shook her head. Not today. Tomorrow night. Monday. You will return as if nothing had happened, as if you had really spent the whole week traveling. You will arrive tired, happy to be home without the slightest suspicion of what you discovered. And during the next few days you will act with total normality. Meanwhile, we will be working behind the scenes. Attorney Arnold leaned forward. We will also contact the city inspection. An inspector will make a surprise visit to your house. If he finds illegal lodging, he can shut down the establishment on the spot and apply severe fines. But there is more, continued Beatrice. I am investigating that Dr. Marcus mentioned in the notes. He has a problematic history. He was already investigated twice by the medical board for unethical practices. With your complaint and the photographic evidence, we can open a formal investigation against him too. If they discover he was willing to drug patients to get fraudulent signatures, he loses his license and faces criminal charges. The magnitude of the plan began to take shape in my head. It was not just stopping Richard and Patricia. It was dismantling the entire network they had built. The corrupt doctor, the fake witnesses, the illegal lodging business, everything. How long will this take? I asked. Beatrice looked at Attorney Arnold before answering. The inspector can go this very week, probably Thursday or Friday. The investigation of the doctor will take more time, but with your formal complaint on Monday, the process begins immediately. And as for Richard and Patricia, she paused dramatically. The final confrontation happens when they least expect it, when they think everything is going according to their plan. I spent the rest of Sunday at Mr. Wilson's house, mentally rehearsing how I would act upon returning. I needed to be convincing. I could not show anger, suspicion, or fear. I had to be the trusting mother returning happy from her cousin's house, the naive mother-in-law who knows nothing. It was ironic. They had been acting in front of me for months. Now it was my turn to act in front of them. On Monday night, with a suitcase in hand and a racing heart, I walked toward my house. Mr. Wilson drove me to the corner, but I walked the rest of the way to make it look like I had arrived by taxi. I rang the doorbell. I heard hurried steps inside. The door opened. Richard was there with a surprised expression. "Mom, we didn't expect you until tomorrow." I smiled with the affection a mother keeps for her son, even though my heart was broken inside. I decided to come back a day early. I missed my home. Patricia appeared behind Richard. Her smile was perfect. Too perfect. "Welcome back, Gwen. How was the trip?" I entered the house with the feeling of entering enemy territory. Everything seemed normal, clean, tidy. No trace of the guests who occupied those spaces just 2 days before. Patricia had done an impeccable job erasing the evidence. The trip was great. I lied with surprising ease. Mary spoiled me a lot. But you know how it is. There is no place like our own home. They took my suitcase to the room. They made tea. They sat with me in the living room asking questions about the invented trip. I answered with stories I had prepared. Restaurants my cousin and I supposedly visited, walks we took, conversations we had. Richard and Patricia listened, nodded, smiled. But I saw something in their eyes. Relief. Relief for having returned without suspicions. Relief because the secret was still intact. "The house is very pretty," I commented, looking around. "You took care of it perfectly." "Of course," said Patricia too quickly. "We cleaned everything, watered the garden, everything as you asked." I took a sip of tea and added casually, "Even the smell is different. It smells like new cleaning product." I saw a brief flash of panic in Patricia's eyes. "Oh, yes. We did a deep cleaning. We wanted everything to be perfect for your return." Lie. She had cleaned to erase the traces of dozens of strangers who occupied my house. That night I slept in my own bed for the first time in a week, but I couldn't really sleep. I stayed awake listening. Around 11, I heard muffled voices coming from Richard and Patricia's room. They were talking in urgent whispers. I got up silently and walked barefoot to their door. I pressed my ear to the crack. "Do you think she suspects anything?" It was Richard's voice, tense. "No, she suspects nothing," replied Patricia, confident. "She is the same as always. Naive, trusting. The plan continues." And Dr. Marcus asked Richard. "It is all arranged," confirmed Patricia. "The consultation is next Friday. We will put the sedative in her food at breakfast. We will say we are taking her for a routine checkup. When she realizes what she signed, it will already be too late. The power of attorney will be registered, and we will have total control." There was a silence. Then Richard spoke with a voice I barely recognized as my son's. "And afterwards," replied Patricia coldly. "Afterwards, we commit her. We already have the place. The Lifeful residence accepts patients with cognitive deterioration. We visit her once a month to keep up appearances. And meanwhile, this house will be completely ours. Completely ours." Those words pierced me like knives. I went back to my room in silence with tears running down my face. But they were not tears of defeat. They were tears of pure rage and determination, of steel. They had sealed their fate. I had just heard the full confession, and although I had not recorded it now, I knew every detail of the plan, including the exact date. The Friday of the following week, I had less than a week to execute the perfect trap. On Tuesday morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. I made coffee, prepared breakfast, talked with Richard and Patricia about banalities. They were also acting. We were all actors in this macabre play. Each one knew a different script. But I had an advantage. I knew they were acting. They didn't know that I was too. As soon as Richard left for work and Patricia went to the market, I called Beatrice from my room with the door locked. I told her word for word everything I heard the night before. "Perfect," she said, satisfied. "Friday is the consultation with the corrupt doctor. That gives us time. The city inspector will go to your house on Thursday. It is better if it is before they try to drug you. Do you think they will receive guests this week? I thought for a moment. Probably Thursday night. There is always more movement that day. Beatrice paused thoughtfully. Then let us coordinate the inspector's visit for Thursday night when the house is full of living proof. In the following 2 days, I maintained my impeccable performance. I acted like the sweet and trusting mother. I asked Patricia if she needed help with anything. I offered Richard his favorite cookies that I made especially for him. They seemed relaxed, convinced that the plan remained intact. On Wednesday night, Patricia even showed me a brochure. I found a health center that offers preventive exams for people of your age. Gwen, what do you think if I take you on Friday? It is free for seniors. Free lie. They were going to pay $5,000 for that exam. I faked genuine interest. A checkup. Well, that wouldn't be bad. It has been a while since I went to the doctor. Patricia smiled, relieved. Excellent. I already scheduled it for Friday at 10 in the morning. I will go with you. I nodded sweetly while inside my blood was boiling. She was closing the trap without knowing that I had already closed an even bigger one around her. Thursday afternoon, while Patricia and Richard were preparing the house for the night's guests, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Beatrice. Inspector confirmed for 9 at night. The police will be ready nearby. Stay in your room when he arrives. We will take care of everything. My heart began to beat faster. Tonight their world would begin to crumble. As expected, the guests began to arrive around 7. First a young couple with large backpacks, then 3 young men who seemed to be traveling together. Then a single woman with a small suitcase. By 8:30, there were 8 strangers occupying my house. Patricia played her role of exemplary hostess. Richard helped with the suitcases, showed the rooms, smiled professionally. I was in my room supposedly reading, but in reality I was waiting, watching the clock. Every minute seemed like an hour. 8:40, 8:50, 5 to 9. And then I heard the sound I was waiting for. The doorbell, firm, authoritative. It was not the doorbell of an expected guest. It was the doorbell of someone with authority. I heard hurried steps, Richard's voice asking who it was. And then a strong male voice from the outside. City Inspector, open the door, please. Silence. A heavy, dense silence. And then the sound of the door opening slowly. Inspector, is there a problem? It was Richard's voice trying to sound calm, but failing. We received an anonymous complaint about illegal lodging at this address. I need to inspect the property. There must be a mistake, I heard Patricia's voice higher pitched than normal. This is a private residence. We do not have any business. Then you won't mind if I verify, answered the inspector with a professional but inflexible tone. I have an inspection warrant signed by the municipal judge. If you do not allow me to enter voluntarily, I will return with the police and a search warrant. There was another silence. Then Richard gave in. Of course, Inspector. Come in. I peeked through a crack in the door. I could see part of the living room. The inspector was a man of about 45 wearing an official city shirt with a clipboard in his hand. Behind him came another younger man, probably an assistant, with a camera. They began to walk through the house. The inspector asked questions. How many people live here permanently? Richard answered with a trembling voice. 3. My mother, my wife, and me. The inspector looked around the living room. There were the 8 guests. Some sitting on the sofa, others standing, all with confused expressions. And these people are... Patricia tried to improvise. Are they visiting friends? The inspector walked up to one of the guests, a young man of about 30. Are you a friend of the family? The young man, honest or perhaps nervous, answered, No, sir. I booked a room online. I paid $50 a night. Richard's face went pale. Patricia tried to intervene. He is confused, Inspector. I do not know what he is talking about. But the inspector was already walking toward the rooms. He opened the door of what had been my guest room. Inside, there were the 3 young men with open backpacks, clothes on the bed, hygiene products in the bathroom. And these gentlemen are also friends. Patricia's silence was answer enough. The inspector took a meter out of his briefcase. He began to count the occupied rooms, photographing each one. Room 1 occupied by 2 non-residents. Room 2 occupied by 3 non-residents. Room 3 occupied by 1 non-resident. Shared bathrooms with signs of multiple use. kitchen with utensils for more than 3 people, extra towels stacked in the hallway. Each phrase was one more nail in the coffin of their illegal business. Richard tried one last defense. "Inspector, this is a misunderstanding. Maybe occasionally we help acquaintances who need lodging, but it is not a business." The inspector interrupted him. "Do you charge for this lodging?" Richard hesitated. "Well, sometimes we receive help for expenses." The inspector shook his head. "This is called a business. Lodging business. And to operate a lodging business, you need a commercial license, tourism operation, authorization, fire safety certificate, health certificate, and payment of the corresponding taxes. Do you have any of those documents?" The silence was absolute. Patricia and Richard looked at each other defeated. They knew they had nothing. The inspector continued. "According to the municipal code, operating a commercial lodging establishment without a license constitutes a serious infraction with a fine of $15,000. In addition, I must inform you that the IRS will be notified about undeclared income. And since this property is registered in the name of—" He looked at the documents Gwen Miller, who according to the records did not authorize any commercial activity. This may also constitute fraudulent use of someone else's property. I felt it was time. I opened my bedroom door and stepped out. All eyes turned to me. The confused guests, the inspector with a professional expression, Richard and Patricia with faces of pure terror. "Good evening," I said with a calm voice. "I am Gwen Miller, owner of this property." The inspector nodded respectfully. "Ms. Miller, did you authorize the operation of a lodging establishment on your property?" I hesitated for an instant, looking directly into the eyes of my son and my daughter-in-law. "No, Inspector, I authorized nothing. In fact, I only discovered this situation a few days ago." Patricia took a step in my direction. "Mom, I can explain." I raised my hand, interrupting. "I do not want explanations, Patricia. Not now." I turned to the inspector. "What happens now?" He closed the clipboard. "The current guests will have to vacate the property immediately. We will give them 30 minutes to collect their belongings. Your son and your daughter-in-law will receive an official notification of the fine and will have to appear before the municipal judge next week. I also activated the police. There are 2 officers outside in case reinforcement is needed for the eviction." The next 30 minutes were chaotic. The guests collected their belongings in a hurry, some demanding a refund from Patricia. She had kept the money in her purse and had to return it under the watchful eye of the inspector. Richard remained paralyzed, unable to speak, watching his illegal business crumble in minutes. When the last guest left, the inspector handed me a copy of the official report. "Ms. Miller, I recommend you consult a lawyer. You have the right to sue for damages. I already have a lawyer, Inspector. Thank you for your work tonight." When the inspector and the assistant left the house, plunged into a sepulchral silence. The 3 of us remained in the living room. I was standing by the window, Richard sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands. Patricia near the door, arms crossed with the expression of a cornered animal. It was she who spoke first. The voice was no longer sweet or calculating. It was desperate. "Mom, I know this looks bad, but we had our reasons. The house bills are high. We have debts." I turned to her slowly. "Reasons, debts. And that justified transforming my house into an illegal business without my consent." Patricia took a step in my direction. "We were going to tell you eventually. We just wanted to save money first, to have some money before what," I interrupted with a sharp voice, "before drugging me and making me sign a fraudulent power of attorney." The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia paled. Richard raised his head abruptly with eyes wide open from shock. How Richard began to say, but his voice failed him. "How do I know I completed the question for him? Because I was never traveling, Richard. I was here watching, discovering every detail of your vile and calculated plan." I walked to the center of the living room, looking at both of them with an intensity that made them recoil. "I know about the illegal lodging scheme. I know about the hidden money in the shed. I know about Dr. Marcus. I know about Friday's consultation where you planned to sedate me. I know about the power of attorney you wanted to make me sign. And I know about the life-full residence where you planned to commit me." Patricia shook her head frantically. No, it is not what you think. Yes, we talked to the doctor, but it was just for precaution because we were worried about your health. Stop lying, I shouted, and my voice resonated through the walls of my own house. I found the documents, Patricia. I saw with my own eyes. I read the notes written in your own handwriting. Mild sedative during consultation. Signature will be obtained in a state of induced confusion. Those were your exact words. Patricia's face lost all color. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. I turned to my son. And you, Richard, you who I raised, who I loved, who I gave everything your father and I could give, how could you? Richard had tears running down his face. Mom, the financial situation was desperate. We had $40,000 in debt. The bank was going to take our old apartment. Patricia said that if we got money fast, and your solution was to betray me, I interrupted. The solution was to steal my house, my freedom, my dignity. It was not theft, exploded Patricia with a shrill voice. This house is huge. You live here alone. We were just using the available space, and as for the power of attorney, it was to protect you. You are aging. You need someone to take decisions for you. I am 62 years old, I said with an icy voice. Not 80, not 90, 62. My mind is perfectly lucid. My health is good. I do not need anyone to make decisions for me. What you were planning was not protection. It was legalized kidnapping. Richard stood up stumbling. Mom, please, we can solve this. We are going to return all the money. We can leave the house if you want, but please do not report us. If you go to the police, we can go to jail. I looked him in the eyes, those eyes that one day looked at me with the pure love of a child, and I felt my heart breaking into pieces. And what did you want me to do? Richard? Let you drug me? Let you lock me in an asylum while you enjoyed my property? It was not going to go that far, murmured Richard. Patricia was just exploring options, but I would never have... I heard your conversation last night. I interrupted again. I heard you planning exactly that. I heard you saying you would visit me once a month to keep up appearances. I heard you transforming me into a formality, into an obstacle that needed to be managed. Richard collapsed on the sofa, sobbing. Patricia stood petrified, her mask of the perfect daughter-in-law finally destroyed. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain composure. Tomorrow is Friday. You had planned to take me to Dr. Marcus at 10 in the morning. Obviously, that is not going to happen. What is going to happen is the following. You are going to pack your things and leave my house. You have until tomorrow at noon. Patricia reacted immediately. Throw us out. Where are we going to go? You should have thought of that before betraying me, I replied without emotion. You have family. You have friends. Figure it out. Mom, please, pleaded Richard. We cannot leave like this. We have no money for a rental deposit. We have nothing. You have $15,000 in the box in the shed, I pointed out. The money you earned illegally with my property. You can use it for the deposit. Although you will probably have to keep it to pay the municipal fine and the lawyer's fees. Patricia turned to me with bright eyes. There was no longer sweetness in her voice, only poison. You know what, fine. We are going to leave your precious house, but do not think this ends here. We are going to hire a lawyer. We are going to challenge the fine. We are going to file a lawsuit for wrongful eviction. I smiled without humor. Go ahead, Patricia. Hire a lawyer. But I warn you that my lawyer is very good and has photographic proof of all the fraudulent documents, of all the criminal plans, of all the details of your illegal operation. She has photos of the hidden money, of the fake contracts, of the notes about drugging me. Do you really want to go to court with that Patricia's face decomposed? Finally, she understood that she was completely defeated, that I had played better, that while they planned to destroy me, I was 2 steps ahead. There is one more thing you need to know, I continued. My lawyer already filed documents revoking any power of attorney that may exist in my name. She also filed a declaration of full mental capacity certified by a forensic psychologist, and she filed a new will where Richard is specifically excluded as an heir due to fraudulent acts. Richard raised his head abruptly. You disinherited me. The voice was a mix of shock and pain. What did you expect? I answered with a tired voice. That I reward you for trying to destroy me. The rest of the night was tense and silent. Richard and Patricia locked themselves in their room. I stayed sitting in the living room, exhausted but relieved. Around midnight, I heard the noise of suitcases being dragged. They were packing. Reality had finally sunk in. The next morning, Friday, I woke up early. I made coffee just for myself. I sat by the window watching the sunrise over the garden that my husband and I had cared for together. At 9 in the morning, Richard and Patricia came down with 4 large suitcases. They did not look at me. They put everything in the car in silence. Richard came back one last time. He left the house keys on the entrance table. For an instant, I thought he was going to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a last plea. But he just looked at me with empty eyes and left. I heard the car engine start. I heard the tires on the asphalt, the car driving away, and then silence. My house was empty. I was alone. I stayed sitting in the living room for a long time after they left. The house felt different, bigger, quieter, but also more mine than ever. I walked through every room, slowly reclaiming every space that had been violated by strangers. I opened the windows to let fresh air in. I took the sheets off all the beds that had been used by the guests. I was going to wash them, but I honestly considered burning them. Some memories do not deserve to be preserved. Around noon, Mr. Wilson knocked on the door. He brought a hot lasagna he had prepared. "I thought maybe today you wouldn't feel like cooking," he said with that kindness only true friends have. We sat down to eat together in my kitchen. I told him everything that had happened the night before. The arrival of the inspector, the confrontation, Richard and Patricia's expulsion. Mr. Wilson listened in silence, occasionally nodding his head. When I finished, he put his wrinkled hand over mine. "You did the right thing, Gwen. The painful thing, but the right thing. Then why does it hurt so much?" I asked with a broken voice. "Because he was your son," answered Mr. Wilson with the wisdom of his 68 years. "Because a mother's love does not disappear simply because the child betrays. It hurts precisely because you loved. If you didn't love, it wouldn't hurt." He was right. That night I cried. I cried for the son I thought I had and who maybe never really existed. I cried for the family I thought I had built. I cried for the betrayal, for the greed that corrupted my own blood. But I also cried of relief, because I had survived, because I had won, because I was still the owner of my life, of my mind, and of my house. The following Monday, Beatrice called me with news. Gwen, the complaint against Dr. Marcus was accepted. The medical board initiated a formal investigation. I also communicated with the public prosecutor with all the evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. They are considering filing criminal charges against Patricia and Richard. I felt a knot in my stomach. Criminal charges, jail. Beatrice paused. "It is possible. Planned fraud, conspiracy to deprive an elderly person of their freedom, falsification of documents. The accusations are serious. But Gwen, the last word is yours. If you do not want to continue with the criminal process, we can limit ourselves to the civil process." I thought about it a lot. A part of me wanted them to pay fully for what they tried to do to me. But another part, the one that was still a mother, could not bear the idea of my son in prison. "Beatrice, proceed with everything related to Dr. Marcus. That man deserves to lose his license. But as for Richard and Patricia, I need time to think." Beatrice understood. "You have a month before the deadline to file the criminal complaint expires. Think about it calmly." 2 weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Richard. The envelope was crumpled as if it had been written and rewritten several times. With trembling hands, I opened it. The handwriting was my son's, but the words were from a destroyed man. "Mom, I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. I have no excuses. Greed blinded me. Patricia convinced me it was the only solution to our problems, but I was weak. I let it happen. I participated. And now I live every day with the knowledge that I betrayed the person who loved me most in this world." The letter continued. "We broke up, Patricia and I. I couldn't continue with someone capable of planning something so vile. I moved alone to a small apartment. I lost my job when the scandal came to light. Now I am working as a construction helper, paying off the debts little by little. I am not writing to ask for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I am very sorry. If I could go back in time, I would change everything. The memory of what I did to you haunts me every night. The letter ended simply, I loved you. I love you. And I regret losing you. Your son, who no longer deserves to be called that, Richard. I cried reading those words. A part of me wanted to tear up the letter and forget everything. But another part, that maternal part Mr. Wilson had mentioned, felt my son's pain. That did not justify his actions. It would never justify them. But it was real pain, real regret. Or at least I wanted to believe it was. I kept the letter in a drawer. I was not ready to answer. Maybe I never would be. But I couldn't throw it away either. A month later, I had to make the decision about the criminal charges. I sat with Beatrice in her office. If I continue with the charges, what happens? She was honest with me. Probably 3 to 5 years in prison for both. Patricia would receive more time for being the main mastermind. Richard maybe less if he cooperates. They would have permanent criminal records, difficulty finding employment in the future. Basically, their lives would be marked forever. I took a deep breath, and if I do not continue, Beatrice leaned forward. The municipal fine remains in effect. They will have to pay it. Dr. Marcus will lose his license regardless of your decision about Richard and Patricia. And civilly, they are already legally barred from approaching you or your property. I closed my eyes. I thought about my husband, about what he would have wanted. I thought about the boy Richard was before greed corrupted him. I thought about the type of person I wanted to be at the end of my life. I am not going to file the criminal complaint, I said finally. Beatrice nodded without judgment. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But it is something I can live with. They will have to live with what they did. That is already punishment enough. Beatrice smiled slightly. You are more generous than they deserve, Gwen. 6 months passed since that night the inspector knocked on my door. The house is truly mine again. I hired a professional cleaning company that eliminated all traces of the guests. I painted the walls with new colors. I donated the furniture that had been used by strangers and bought new pieces. I transformed the back room into a sewing studio. I always wanted a space just for me to sew, and now I have time and peace for that. Mr. Wilson is still my neighbor and best friend. We have dinner together twice a week. He helped me install a security system in the house, not because I am afraid, but because now I value my privacy more than ever. Beatrice became more than my lawyer. She is my confidant, my legal protector, my friend. I made sure to update my will, leaving something for her for everything she did. And Richard, I had no direct contact with him since that letter. But through mutual acquaintances, I know he is still working in construction, that he is paying the debts, that he lives alone. There are days when I think about answering his letter. There are days when I think about calling him. But then I remember the box in the shed, the documents about drugging me, the conversations about committing me to an asylum, and the wound bleeds again. Maybe one day I can forgive, not forget. I will never forget. But maybe I can forgive. My therapist says forgiveness is not for the person who hurt you. It is for yourself, to free yourself from the weight of hate. I am working on that slowly, painfully. But I am working. One afternoon, while I was sewing in my new studio, Mr. Wilson came to visit me. He stood looking at the dress I was making, a light blue dress with embroidered flowers. "It is beautiful," he commented. "Thank you," I replied. "It is my way of healing. Every stitch is a piece of my life that I rescue." He smiled. "You know what? You survived something that would have destroyed many people. You are stronger than you imagine, Gwen." That night, while I was preparing to sleep in my silent but safe house, I thought about everything that had happened. The fake trip, the night spying from Mr. Wilson's window, the shed and its secrets. The early morning I held my breath, seeing the full truth. The confrontation, the victory, the pain, the loneliness that came after. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 62-year-old woman with more wrinkles than before, with sadder but also wiser eyes. I saw a survivor. I saw someone who had been betrayed by the one she loved most, and yet still stood tall. I learned that love can be the perfect disguise for a trap, I whispered to my reflection. but I also learned that self-love is the strongest shield against any betrayal. I turned off the light and lay in my bed, in my house, under my roof, alone. Yes, hurt, of course, but free owner of my destiny. And that, after everything I lived, was more valuable than anything. The months continued to pass, and life found a new rhythm, a slower, calmer, but genuine rhythm. I began to attend an embroidery group at the neighborhood church. I met other women my age, each with their stories, their pains, their triumphs. I felt part of something new. Mr. Wilson introduced me to a gardening club. On Saturday mornings, we meet to exchange cuttings, share techniques, talk about flowers and plants. I learned that life continues even after the biggest storms, that it is possible to rebuild, that it is possible to be happy again in a different way, more cautious perhaps, but real. On one of those Saturday afternoons, while I was pruning the rose bushes in the garden, I saw a car stop in front of the house. My heart raced when I recognized who got out of the car. It was Richard. He was different, thinner, simple clothes of someone who works hard, unshaven beard, tired eyes. We stood looking at each other for a long moment. He from the gate, me from the middle of the garden, with the pruning shears still in my hand. "Hello, Mom," he said with a low voice, almost a whisper. "Hello, Richard," I replied. My voice came out firmer than I expected. He looked at the ground. "I know I have no right to be here. I know you do not want to see me. But today marks 1 year since everything happened, and I needed to come. I needed to see you, even if only from afar. 1 year. I hadn't realized so much time had passed." He continued talking, the words coming out fast, as if he had rehearsed 1,000 times. "I changed, Mom. I know that doesn't erase what I did. Nothing can erase it, but I changed. I go to therapy every week. I paid half of the debts. I work honestly. I get up every day at 5 in the morning and go to the construction site, and every day I carry the weight of knowing that I betrayed the person who loved me most in this world." Tears began to run down his face. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I didn't come to ask to come back because I know I can't. I just came to say that I am sorry, and that you were right about everything, about kicking me out, about disinheriting me, about showing me that actions have consequences." I stood still, holding the shears, feeling my own heart squeeze. A part of me wanted to run to him, hug him like I did when he was a child and got hurt. But another part, the part that was still bleeding, kept me in my place. Richard wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "I am leaving now. I just wanted you to know that I am trying to be a better person, that every day I fight to be someone you could be proud of, even knowing that day may never come." He turned to leave, and then without thinking much, my voice came out. "Richard." He stopped. He turned around. I took 2 steps toward the gate. "Are you really going to therapy?" I asked. "Every week," he answered quickly. "Every Thursday at 7 in the evening. It has helped me understand many things. To see how I was manipulated, but also how I let myself be manipulated, how greed blinded me, how I almost destroyed the most important person in my life." I nodded slowly. "And the debts I already paid $22,000 of the 40,000. I work a lot. I do overtime whenever I can. I sleep little, but I don't care. It is the least I can do to fix the disaster I made." We stood in silence for a moment. The wind stirred the leaves of the trees around us. "I am not ready to forgive you, Richard," I said finally, my voice trembling but firm. "What you and Patricia planned to do to me was too cruel, too calculated. I know, Mom. I know. And maybe I will never be ready," I continued. "Maybe this wound will never heal completely." He nodded his head, more tears running. "I understand." But I took a deep breath. "But maybe with time, a lot of time, we can find a way to rebuild something. Not like it was before. That will never be possible again. But maybe something new, something different." His eyes lit up with a small spark of hope. "Do you mean it?" "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "I just know you are my son. And as much as you hurt me, as much as you broke my trust, there is still a part of me that wants to believe that people can change, that they can redeem themselves." Richard sobbed. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to prove I deserve that chance, Mom. I swear I will. Don't make me promises, Richard. I said tiredly. Show me with actions, with time, with consistency. Show that you really changed. And maybe, just maybe, one day we can sit at the same table again. He nodded vigorously. I will. I will show it. Every day. Can I call you sometimes? Just to know how you are? I hesitated. Then I nodded slowly. Once a month. No more than that. I am rebuilding my life, Richard. I need space. I need time to heal. Once a month is perfect, he said, with a voice full of gratitude. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for not closing the door completely. He went back to the car. Before getting in, he turned one more time. I love you, Mom. I always loved you, even when I was doing those horrible things. I know that doesn't justify anything, but it is the truth. I didn't answer. I just watched him get in the car and leave. When the car disappeared around the corner, my legs went weak. I sat on a garden bench and cried. I cried everything I had held back during that conversation. Mr. Wilson appeared a few minutes later. He had seen everything from his window, but had respected my privacy. He sat beside me in silence. You did well, he said finally. You didn't close the door, but you didn't open it completely either. You left a crack. And that is how healing works, little by little, with caution. Is he right? I asked. I don't know, Gwen, he answered honestly. Only time will tell. But you did the right thing by giving him the chance to show it. And you did the right thing by making it clear that words are not enough, that you need to see real change. In the following days, I thought a lot about that meeting, about Richard's words, about the possibility that one day we could rebuild some kind of relationship. It wouldn't be like before. Broken trust is never rebuilt the same. There is always a crack left. But maybe it could transform into something new, something built not on naivety, but on awareness, on the clarity of boundaries, on mutual respect earned with effort. Beatrice told me I did well not to close all doors, that forgiveness is a process, not an event, that it can take years, or it may never happen completely, and that is okay, that I had the right to heal at my own pace. Today, while I write this story, sitting in my sewing studio surrounded by colorful fabrics and threads, I look out the window toward my garden. The rose bushes I pruned that Saturday are blooming beautifully, red, yellow, pink, symbols of renewal, of things that seemed dead but come back to life with care and time. I learned so many lessons in these last months. I learned that trust is fragile and precious, that we must protect it especially from the closest people because they are the ones who can cause the worst wounds. I learned that intuition does not lie, that when something feels wrong, it is probably wrong, that we must trust our instincts even when everyone says we are exaggerating. I learned that legal documents are important, that powers of attorney and wills must be guarded with care, that it is never too early to protect our assets and our autonomy. I learned that loneliness is not the worst fate, that sometimes it is better to be alone than surrounded by people who betray you, that true friends like Mr. Wilson and Beatrice are worth more than blood. I learned that forgiveness is for the one who forgives, not for the one who is forgiven, that we can choose to forgive to free ourselves from hate, or we can choose not to forgive, and that is also okay, that healing has no instruction manual. And I learned that even after the worst storms, even after the greatest betrayals, life continues, that we are stronger than we imagine, that we can rebuild, that we can be happy again, in a different way perhaps, more cautious, more aware, but real and genuine. I look at the woman I became. I am no longer that naive Gwen who believed family was sacred regardless of anything. Now I know family is built with respect, honesty, and true love, not just with blood. I have scars, some visible, many invisible, but I also have strength, wisdom, autonomy, and a peace that comes from knowing I defended my dignity, that I didn't let myself be destroyed, that I fought and won. Sometimes at night before sleeping, I still think about everything that happened, about the fake trip, about the nights watching from the window, about the box in the shed, about the documents that proved the complete conspiracy against me. And I ask myself, what would have happened if I hadn't trusted my intuition, if I had ignored the signs, if I hadn't faked that trip? I would probably be in an asylum now, drugged, confused, while my son and my daughter-in-law enjoyed my house, living off my property, visiting me once a month to keep up appearances. The thought gives me chills. But it didn't happen. Because I was smart. Because I had courage. Because I counted on the help of the right people. And because I never gave up on myself. Richard calls me once a month as we agreed. The conversations are short. He talks about work, about therapy, about the debts he is paying. I listen. Sometimes I comment on something. Sometimes I just listen. I am not ready for more yet. Maybe I never will be. Or maybe in a few years we can have a coffee together, talk for real, rebuild something small but real. I don't know. The future will tell. For now I live one day at a time. I sew, I garden, I drink pot coffee with Mr. Wilson. I go to the embroidery group, I take care of my house. I sleep in peace knowing that every inch of this place is mine, that no one can take me out of here, that I built legal walls strong enough to protect me. And from time to time I look at the rose bushes in the garden and think that I am like them. I was pruned brutally by betrayal. I bled. I almost died. But with time, care, and a lot of self-love, I am blooming again. Different maybe, more cautious for sure, but alive, strong, and mine. Completely mine. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not publish here. I wait for you there.